I tried to return a $40 scarf to buy groceries. The clerk sneered, swiped my loyalty card, and started shaking. Your account balance is $120 million. Before I explain how a girl who was literally counting pennies to afford a single loaf of cheap white bread suddenly possessed the GDP of a small island nation on her cracked smartphone, dame a favor, hit that subscribe button, turn on notifications, and buckle up, because this story is about to take you on the wildest financial roller coaster of your life. It was a bleak, rain-soaked Tuesday afternoon when my life split into two distinct chapters, the before and the unimaginable after. To understand the sheer absurdity of what happened in that high-end boutique, you need to understand exactly how desperate I was. My checking account was entirely overdrawn. I had exactly 85 cents to my name, a mountain of past-due utility bills stacked on my kitchen counter, and a stomach that hadn't seen a hot meal in 2 days. I was living on the ragged edge of absolute poverty. My only lifeline was a neatly folded, unused silk blend scarf tucked inside my canvas tote bag. I had purchased it months ago on clearance for $40 at Laura, an ultra-luxury boutique downtown. I bought it for a corporate job interview that I desperately needed but ultimately never got. The scarf still had the tags firmly attached. In my current state of starvation, that piece of fabric wasn't a fashion accessory. It was a week's worth of groceries. It was survival. Walking into Laura felt like trespassing into another dimension. The air inside was climate-controlled to perfection, heavy with the suffocating scent of expensive vanilla perfume and raw, unadulterated wealth. The floors were cut from seamless Italian marble, and soft, classical piano music played from hidden speakers. And then there was me. I was dripping wet from the rain, wearing a faded, oversized hoodie, 3-year-old Levi's, and a pair of Converse sneakers that literally had gray duct tape holding the left sole together. I stuck out like a sore thumb, or worse, like a disease. The moment I stepped through the heavy glass doors, the store's security guard instinctively took a step toward me, his hand resting near his radio, but the real gatekeeper was Eleanor, the boutique's general manager. Eleanor was a woman who looked like she breathed exclusively through a silver spoon. She wore a sharply tailored, immaculate Prada suit, her hair pulled back into a severe, facelift-tight bun. I stood awkwardly near the crystal display counters, waiting for her to finish fawning over a wealthy client who was browsing diamond-encrusted handbags. Eleanor saw me out of the corner of her eye, and the micro-expression of pure, visceral disgust that flashed across her face was something I will never forget. She looked at me, not as a human being, but as a stain on her pristine sales floor. After her wealthy client departed, I slowly approached the mahogany checkout counter. My heart was pounding against my ribs like a trapped bird. "Can I help you?" Eleanor asked. Her voice was dripping with a thick layer of patronizing venom. She didn't even look at my face. Her eyes immediately darted down to my taped-up, soggy sneakers. "Yes, hi. I'd like to return this. Please," I said, my voice trembling slightly as I pulled the $40 scarf out of my damp tote bag and laid it on the pristine counter. Eleanor stared at the scarf, then back at me, letting out a long, exaggerated sigh. It was the kind of sigh meant to let you know exactly how insignificant you are. "Ma'am, this is a high-end luxury establishment, not a pawn shop," she sneered, her manicured fingers tapping impatiently against the marble. "We generally do not process returns on clearance items, especially not for people who clearly don't belong in our client demographic." I swallowed the lump of humiliation rising in my throat. My pride was screaming at me to walk out, but my empty stomach kept me rooted to the floor. "The tag says I have 90 days to return it in original condition." I pushed back, my voice barely a whisper. "Please, I just need the money back to my account." Eleanor rolled her eyes so hard, I thought they might get stuck in her head. "Fine. Let's get this over with before you track any more mud onto my floor," she snapped. "Do you have your digital loyalty card? Or did you lose your phone, too?" I pulled out my phone, a battered, 4-year-old device, with a spiderweb crack across the screen. My banking app was linked to the boutique's digital wallet system for processing direct refunds. I pulled up the barcode. Eleanor snatched the phone from my hand with maximum disdain. She grabbed her scanner, heavily sighing one last time, and swiped the laser across my cracked screen. Beep. The store's ultra-modern point-of-sale system was integrated with a new high-tier financial verification network, designed to instantly sync and display the total liquid portfolio of their VIP clients to offer them exclusive credit lines. It was supposed to be a tool for them to grovel to the ultra-rich. The terminal screen loaded for a second. The little spinning wheel on the monitor paused. And then, the tectonic plates of my universe shifted. I watched Eleanor's face. The transformation was so violent, so immediate, that it almost looked comical. Her haughty, arrogant sneer froze completely. In a matter of 2 seconds, all the blood physically drained from her face, leaving her a ghastly, translucent shade of white. Her meticulously manicured hands, which had just been tapping with such arrogant authority, began to tremble. Then they began to violently shake. The expensive scanner slipped from her fingers and clattered loudly against the mahogany counter. Echoing through the dead silence of the boutique, Eleanor leaned forward, bracing both hands on the counter as if her knees had just given out. She squeezed her eyes shut, shook her head, and opened them again, staring at the glowing monitor like she was staring at the Grim Reaper himself. A thick, cold bead of sweat broke out across her forehead, ruining her expensive makeup. "Ma'am," Eleanor gasped. Her voice was completely gone, replaced by a hollow, breathless wheeze. She sounded like she was suffocating. This system. There has to be a catastrophic error." I frowned, a wave of panic washing over me. Did my account bounce? Was I being charged a fee? "What is it?" I asked, my voice tight. "Is my account closed?" Eleanor slowly turned the heavy monitor around, so it faced me. Her hands were shaking so severely the screen rattled on its hinges. She pointed a trembling, manicured finger at the glowing green digits dominating the center of the screen. "Ma'am," Eleanor stammered, her eyes wide with unadulterated terror as she looked at my duct-taped shoes. And then back at the screen. "Your synced portfolio balance. It says you have $120. 4512. 00. Par deux." The modest life and the disrespect. To understand why, looking at that $120, 4512. 00. On Eleanor's screen felt less like winning the lottery and more like a psychological break from reality. You have to rewind the clock. You have to understand the absolute, soul-crushing misery. That was my life exactly 4 days prior. 4 days before I became richer than A-list celebrities and Wall Street titans. I was a girl trying to calculate if I could survive on 1 meal a day instead of 2. Poverty isn't just a lack of money, it's a full-time job. It's an exhausting, all-consuming mathematics equation that never leaves your brain. You don't just walk down the street. You calculate the caloric burn versus the cost of replacing the calories. You don't just sleep. You calculate how many blankets you need to pile on your bed because you haven't been able to afford the heating bill since November. My apartment was a tiny, mold-infested studio above a noisy laundromat on the bad side of town. The radiator had been broken for weeks, meaning I slept in my winter coat. My pantry consisted of exactly 3 items: a half-empty jar of generic peanut butter, a sleeve of stale saltine crackers, and 5 packets of chicken-flavored instant ramen. I had developed a pathetic routine of breaking a block of dry ramen noodles perfectly in half, boiling 1 portion for lunch, and saving the other half for dinner. I was living a life of fractions. On Thursday afternoon, the desperation reached its peak. My bank account, which I checked with the anxiety of a bomb squad technician, displayed a bleak, glowing number. Lingmeiyuan Bashawu, 85 cents. I couldn't even buy a pack of gum. Worse. My only pair of viable walking shoes, my trusty black Converse, had finally given up the ghost. The left sole had detached entirely, flapping like a hungry mouth. Every time I took a step, with 0 cash to replace them, I had resorted to wrapping heavy-duty gray duct tape around the toe box just to keep the shoe attached to my foot. I needed a job. I needed anything. So I wrapped my taped shoe in a plastic grocery bag to protect it from the damp pavement and began the 3-mile walk toward downtown to drop off my resume at a string of temp agencies. That walk was a mistake. A massive, humiliating mistake. The route took me past Le Petit Palais, an upscale French bistro and coffee house where the city's elite went to sip $15 lattes and pretend they were in Paris. The patio was crowded with women in designer sunglasses and men in tailored suits. I kept my head down, pulling my faded, oversized hoodie up, praying to remain invisible as I hurried past the wrought iron fencing. Oh my God, is that? Wait, no way. Is that you? The voice sliced through the ambient noise of the street like a screeching siren. It was high-pitched, nasally, and dripping with performative shock. I froze. My stomach plummeted into my taped-up shoes. I knew that voice. I slowly turned my head. And there she was. Chloe Kensington. Chloe and I had gone to the same university years ago. While I had been working 3 part-time jobs just to afford used textbooks, Chloe had been driven to campus in her father's imported Porsche. She was the epitome of generational wealth mixed with pure, unadulterated entitlement. She lived to remind everyone else of their place in the food chain. Chloe was sitting at a prime patio table with 3 equally polished, identical-looking friends. She was wearing a pristine, cream-colored Chanel tweed jacket and oversized Dior sunglasses pushed up into her perfectly blown-out blonde hair. "It is you," Chloe practically squealed, standing up from her chair and pointing a manicured finger at me. She didn't lower her voice. If anything, she projected it so the entire patio of wealthy patrons could hear. "Girls, look, it's the charity case from sophomore year." I felt the heat of 1,000 suns flush my cheeks. Dozens of heads turned toward me. The wealthy patrons paused their conversations, their eyes scanning me up and down, taking in my wet hoodie, my exhausted face, and my utterly pathetic posture. "Hi, Chloe," he muttered, taking a step backward. "I'm just passing through. I have somewhere to be." "Oh, clearly. Judging by your outfit, you're late for your shift at the local dumpster." Chloe laughed. A sharp, cruel sound that her friends instantly echoed. She stepped out from behind the patio fencing, blocking my path on the sidewalk. She looked me up and down, her eyes narrowing with malicious delight as they finally landed on my feet. I tried to shuffle my left foot behind my right to hide the plastic bag and the gray tape, but I was too late. Chloe dramatically gasped, placing a hand over her chest as if she had just witnessed a tragedy. "Wait, are you serious? Is that literal garbage tape on your feet? Are you wearing duct tape as footwear?" She didn't just ask me. She announced it to the world. A chorus of snickers erupted from the patio. A businessman in a suit actually pointed at my feet and chuckled. "My shoe broke," I whispered, my voice cracking, tears of profound humiliation burning the back of my eyes. "Leave me alone." "Chloe." "Oh, you poor, pathetic thing," Chloe mocked, taking a $100 bill out of her designer purse and waving it in my face. "Here, take this. Go buy yourself some dignity, or at least a pair of shoes that don't belong in a landfill. You're polluting the air around my table with your poverty." She tossed the crisp $100 bill onto the wet pavement at my feet. It landed right next to my taped shoe. Every fiber of my being, every screaming instinct of survival, told me to pick up the money. $100 meant groceries for 3 weeks. It meant turning the heat on for a few days. But the sheer, toxic humiliation radiating from Chloe and her laughing friends paralyzed me. If I picked up that bill, I was exactly what she said I was. A pathetic beggar. A stray dog waiting for scraps. I didn't pick it up. I turned around and ran. I ran until my lungs burned, and the gray tape on my shoe started to peel off. I ran all the way back to my freezing, miserable studio apartment, slammed the door, slid down the wall, and cried until I was physically sick. I was entirely broken. I had hit rock bottom, and then rock bottom had caved in, dropping me into an abyss of despair. Through my tears, my eyes landed on the canvas tote bag sitting on my broken kitchen chair. Inside it was the one nice thing I owned. The $40 silk blend clearance scarf from Laura. The scarf I had bought in a moment of delusional hope for a better future, I wiped my face. I couldn't eat hope. I couldn't pay the electric bill with silk. That $40 could buy enough rice, beans, and cheap bread to keep me alive until the end of the month. I didn't care how snobby the boutique was. I was going to get my money back. I had to. That was the desperation that drove me through the rain, into the suffocatingly luxurious air of Laura, and right into the disdainful path of Eleanor, the store manager. Which brings us right back to the present moment. Right back to Eleanor's heavily contoured face losing every drop of color as she stared at the glowing green digits on the boutique's VIP portfolio terminal. 121,700. Ba yi 200. Par trois. The VIP room and the revelation. For a long, agonizing moment, the entire boutique went dead silent. The soft classical piano music playing from the hidden speakers seemed to fade into a hollow echo. The only sound in the universe was the frantic, erratic wheezing coming from Eleanor's throat. I stared at the screen. I blinked once. Twice. I rubbed my eyes, convinced that my prolonged starvation had finally triggered a full-blown visual hallucination. But the glowing green numbers on the black background of the high-tier financial verification network remained fixed, mocking my fragile grip on reality. 120,453,812. And 0 cents. I don't understand, I whispered, my voice sounding like it was coming from underwater. I looked down at my phone, the screen still webbed with cracks, and then back up at the monitor. There's a glitch. Your machine is broken. My balance is 85 cents. Cents, Eleanor. Eleanor wasn't listening to me. Her eyes were completely dilated, reflecting the green glow of the screen. In the high-end luxury retail world, a synced portfolio of $1 million gets you a polite smile. 10 million get you a glass of champagne. But over 100 million that was buy the entire building and fire everyone inside for fun territory. That was sovereign wealth. That was untouchable god status. And Eleanor had just treated an untouchable god like a diseased rat. Security. A booming voice suddenly echoed across the sales floor. I jumped. The boutique's burly security guard, having noticed Eleanor's dropped scanner and her ghostly pale face, was fast walking toward the register, his hand unclipping his radio. Miss Eleanor, is there a problem with this individual? Do you need her escorted out? Eleanor snapped out of her paralysis. The sheer panic that seized her features was almost majestic. She lunged across the mahogany counter, throwing her hands up in the air as if she were trying to stop a bullet. No, stand down. Marcus, stand down immediately. You absolute imbecile. Step back. Eleanor shrieked, her voice cracking in a register so high it probably shattered crystal in the back room. The guard froze in his tracks, looking utterly bewildered. Eleanor practically scrambled around the checkout counter. Her severe, confident posture had entirely collapsed. She looked like she wanted to drop to her knees and kiss my duct-taped Converse. She approached me with her hands clasped together in a posture of desperate, trembling prayer. Ma'am. Miss Your Grace, I mean. Ma'am. Eleanor stuttered, her teeth literally chattering. Sweat was visibly rolling down her heavily powdered neck, staining the collar of her immaculate Prada suit. I cannot begin to express the absolute depth of my apologies. I was fatigued. I was blind. Please, you must allow me to make this right. You simply cannot stand out here on the public floor. Before I could process what was happening, Eleanor was gently but firmly placing her trembling hand on my wet, faded hoodie, guiding me away from the register. Please, right this way, into the sovereign suite. Now please, she begged, her eyes wide with terror. I was too in shock to resist. She ushered me through a set of frosted glass double doors that I hadn't even noticed before. We stepped out of the bright, intimidating sales floor and into a room that looked like a billionaire's private study. The sovereign suite was a soundproof VIP lounge bathed in warm, amber light. The floors were covered in thick, snow-white Persian rugs. The furniture consisted of plush, midnight blue velvet sofas, and the walls were lined with dark mahogany shelves displaying limited edition designer bags that cost more than my entire life's earnings combined. I stood frozen in the center of the room. A dollop of muddy water dripped from my taped-up shoe and sank into the pristine alabio. Snow-white fibers of the priceless rug. Eleanor didn't even flinch at the mud. She rushed over to a crystal bar cart in the corner. Her hands were shaking so violently that she nearly dropped a crystal flute as she popped the cork on a bottle of vintage Dom Perignon champagne. It foamed over the edges, spilling onto her expensive suit. But she didn't care. She practically ran back to me, extending the bubbling glass with both hands like an offering to an angry deity. "Please, Mom, drink. Relax," Eleanor pleaded, her breathing shallow and ragged. "We will process your return immediately. In fact, forget the return. I will personally gift you our new winter collection. Anything you desire. Just please. I am begging you. Do not contact corporate about my earlier indiscretion. I have a mortgage. I have children in private school." I didn't take the glass. I just stared at her. The absurdity of the situation finally shattered my paralysis, but it wasn't replaced by joy. It was replaced by a cold, suffocating, primal terror. $120 million. I didn't have that money. I was a broke girl living in a freezing apartment above a laundromat, which meant only one thing. Something had gone catastrophically, illegally wrong. My heart started hammering against my ribs like a jackhammer. My breath hitched in my throat. This wasn't a bank error in my favor. This was massive, international wire fraud. A drug cartel had routed money through my dormant digital wallet. Hackers had used my identity to siphon funds from a multinational corporation. I was going to jail. I saw the headlines flashing in my mind. The FBI kicking down the flimsy door of my studio apartment, being dragged out in handcuffs. I was going to be framed for the biggest cyber heist in the city's history, and I would spend the rest of my natural life in a federal penitentiary making license plates. "Oh my God," I choked out, stumbling backward. The room started to spin. The amber lights blurred. "Ma'am, are you unwell? Should I call a private physician?" Eleanor asked frantically, stepping forward. "No. Don't call anyone. Don't call the police," I screamed, my voice shrill and hysterical. I lunged past her, snatching my cheap canvas tote bag from the velvet sofa. I didn't even grab the $40 scarf I had come to return. I left it crumpled on the cushion. "Mum, wait, your scarf. Your champagne. Please," Eleanor cried out, chasing me to the frosted glass doors. I didn't look back. I burst out of the Sovereign Suite, sprinting across the Italian marble floor of the main boutique. The security guard jumped out of my way as if I were a ghost. I hit the heavy glass front doors with my shoulder, bursting out onto the wet, crowded sidewalk. I didn't stop to breathe. I ran blindly into the freezing rain, my heart pounding a frantic rhythm in my ears, terrified that if I stopped moving, the sirens would start wailing, and my life would officially be over. Par quatre. Uncovering the origin. I ran until my lungs felt like they were packed with shattered glass. I didn't care about the freezing rain soaking through my oversized hoodie, or the fact that the gray duct tape on my left shoe had completely given out, leaving my sock to absorb the muddy puddles of the city streets. All I cared about was getting as far away from that boutique as humanly possible. I finally collapsed onto a wet, wooden bench in a small, isolated park a few blocks away. My chest heaved violently. I pulled my knees to my chest, hyperventilating, scanning the street for flashing red and blue police lights or unmarked black SUVs. My mind was racing through terrifying, catastrophic scenarios. Had someone stolen my social security number to launder cartel money? Was I the unwitting fall guy for a massive international Ponzi scheme? $120 million. You don't just accidentally acquire that kind of wealth. That was blood money. That was go to federal prison forever money. With shaking hands, I dug into my soaked pockets and pulled out my cracked, 4-year-old smartphone. I had to know. I had to see exactly what Eleanor had seen on her terminal before I threw the phone into the nearest river and hitchhiked to Mexico. I opened my primary banking app. My fingers were trembling so severely, and the screen was so slick with rain, that my Face ID failed 3 times. I had to manually punch in my 6-digit PIN, mistyping it twice out of sheer panic. Finally, the little loading circle spun on the screen. A new pop-up immediately blocked my view. Welcome to our new all-in-one financial dashboard. We've successfully auto-synced your external digital wallets, crypto vaults, and brokerage accounts linked to your verified email address to give you a complete picture of your net worth. I frantically tapped X to close the prompt. The dashboard loaded. My eyes immediately locked onto my primary checking account. It still said exactly what it was supposed to say. Ling Mei Yuan Bashawu. I let out a ragged gasp of relief. But then, my eyes drifted downward to a newly generated tab labeled Linked Digital Assets Web3 Blockchain. My heart stopped beating. There it was. The exact same terrifying, impossible number that had caused Eleanor to nearly faint in her Prada suit. 120美元 450 8115. I stared at the glowing digits, the rain dripping off my nose and splashing onto the cracked glass. I tapped the number. The app opened a drop-down menu to show the itemized source of this unfathomable fortune. I braced myself for the name of a shell corporation, a dark web syndicate, or a Russian oligarch's slush fund. Instead, the screen loaded a tiny, pixelated logo of a cartoon Shiba Inu dog wearing a shiny silver astronaut helmet. Next to the cartoon dog was the name of the asset, Astrodog Coin ADC. Quantity held, Erling Su. 550 adce. Current market price, $0 per coin. I blinked. I wiped the rain from my eyes and blinked again. Astrodog Coin. Suddenly, the cold terror gripping my spine vanished, replaced by a surreal, dizzying rush of memory. The park, the rain, and the misery of my current life faded away, pulling me back to a specific Tuesday night exactly 5 years ago. I was a sophomore in college, sitting in the cramped, pizza box-cluttered dorm room of my friend. Mark was an obsessive computer science major who spent his free time browsing obscure Reddit forums. That night, he was practically vibrating with excitement about a ridiculous, brand-new meme coin that some anonymous developer had launched as a parody of the cryptocurrency craze. It's called Astrodog, and it's literally going to the moon. Bro, Mark had yelled, aggressively pointing at his dual monitors. They're practically giving it away. It's trading at 0.00000 something cents. Put in $10. You get billions of them. I had laughed at him. I was broke even back then, surviving on a strict budget of financial aid and a part-time cafeteria job, but Mark wouldn't let it go. To shut him up, I took a prepaid Visa debit card out of my wallet that had exactly $5.00 left on it. I downloaded a digital wallet app, linked my primary email, and let Mark walk me through the convoluted process of swapping my $5 for exactly 2 billion Astrodog coins. I remembered looking at the cartoon dog in the spacesuit on my phone, laughing at how stupid it was, and then going back to studying for my biology midterms. 2 weeks later, I ran out of storage space on my phone because I wanted to download a new game, so I deleted the digital wallet app entirely. I never wrote down a password. I completely, utterly forgot it existed. Back in the present, sitting on the freezing park bench, my jaw was hanging open, because my new banking app's update hadn't hacked a cartel. It had used my primary email address and identity verification to automatically locate and sync my dormant decentralized blockchain wallets. It found the dog in the spacesuit. I minimized the banking app and opened Google. My thumbs flew across the keyboard as I typed, Astrodog Coin News. The search results exploded onto my screen. The Astro Squeeze. How a forgotten meme coin minted accidental billionaires overnight. Tech billionaires tweet sends Astrodog coin surging 100x in historic rally. Major exchanges list ADC, triggering massive supply burn. I clicked on the top financial article, my eyes devouring the text. Apparently, a few months ago, a wildly famous, eccentric tech billionaire had posted a cryptic meme of a dog in a spacesuit on social media. The internet lost its collective mind. Retail investors flooded the market, Major global exchanges scrambled to list the obscure, dead token. Because the original developer had burned half the supply years ago, the sudden influx of billions of dollars in trading volume caused a historic, unprecedented liquidity squeeze. A coin that I bought for fractions of a microscopic penny had skyrocketed, violently and unstoppably, until it hit 10 cents a coin. I did the math in my head. $5. 5 single, crumpled dollars that I threw away as a joke half a decade ago, multiplied by the sheer, unadulterated absurdity of the internet. 120元450 8200. I wasn't a criminal. I wasn't going to federal prison. The money was legal. It was clean. It was mine. I slowly lowered my phone. The freezing rain was still pouring down, soaking me to the bone, but I couldn't feel the cold anymore. I looked down at my left foot, staring at the pathetic, gray duct tape holding my cheap canvas shoe together. I thought about the 85 cents in my checking account. I thought about the mold in my apartment, the instant ramen, and the crushing, suffocating weight of poverty that had defined my entire adult life. And then, sitting alone in the middle of a torrential downpour, I started to laugh. It started as a quiet chuckle, bubbling up from the very bottom of my empty stomach. Then it grew louder. Within seconds, I was throwing my head back, laughing hysterically at the gray sky. Tears of pure, unadulterated shock streaming down my face, mixing with the rain. I was a centimillionaire. I was richer than the CEO of the bank that currently held my 85 cents. I could buy the apartment building I lived in and bulldoze it for fun. The laughter slowly subsided, replaced by a cold, sharp, profound sense of clarity. The fear was gone. The desperation was dead. A new, powerful energy flooded my veins, straightening my posture. I thought about Chloe Kensington, laughing at my taped-up shoes and throwing a $100 bill at my feet like I was a stray dog. I thought about Eleanor, the elitist boutique manager who looked at me like I was a disease polluting her pristine floor, only to practically grovel in her own sweat moments later. They thought they owned the world because they wore a few $1,000s worth of fabric. They thought money gave them the right to strip away the humanity of those beneath them. I looked back down at my phone. The green digits were still glowing. I didn't just have money now. I had FU money. And it was time to teach the elitist snobs of this city a lesson they would never, ever forget. Part 5. The test. A week passed. 7 days that completely rewrote the fundamental laws of my universe. I didn't buy a mansion. I didn't buy a fleet of exotic sports cars. And I certainly didn't post a picture of a champagne glass on a private jet to my Instagram. The very first thing I did was hire a ruthless, top-tier wealth management firm based out of Manhattan. I spent 3 grueling days in a windowless conference room with high-powered financial attorneys and crypto liquidation specialists, carefully and legally offloading my astronomical supply of AstroDog coin. When the dust settled, the taxes were paid, and the blockchain transactions were fully verified. My new primary banking app no longer displayed 85 cents. It displayed a fully insured, heavily guarded, an entirely liquid cash balance of $120. 450 0. My wealth managers practically begged me to let them move me into a 5-star hotel penthouse with a private security detail. I politely declined. Instead, I went back to my freezing studio apartment above the laundromat. I paid my overdue heating bill online, bought fresh groceries for the first time in months, and slept for 14 hours straight. For the next few days, I just sat by my window, drinking hot coffee, watching the city move below me. I realized that having unlimited money doesn't just change what you can buy, it fundamentally changes your psychological cellular structure. The constant, buzzing static of survival anxiety was completely gone. In its place was a profound, unshakable armor of absolute peace. But there was one piece of unfinished business, a nagging curiosity that I couldn't shake. I needed to know if the people who had treated me like garbage were just having a bad day, or if they were truly, deeply rotten to their core. I needed to conduct a social experiment. On Tuesday afternoon, exactly 1 week after I had fled Laura in sheer terror, I got dressed. I didn't put on designer clothes. I put on the exact same faded, oversized hoodie. I slipped into my ancient Levi's. And most importantly, I wrapped a fresh layer of heavy-duty gray duct tape around the broken toe of my left Converse sneaker. I looked like a girl who didn't have a penny to her name. But in the inner pocket of my hoodie, resting against my chest, was a newly minted, solid metal, ultra-exclusive black card. A financial weapon of mass destruction that only a fraction of a percent of the global population even knew existed. When I walked through the heavy glass doors of Laura, the familiar wave of expensive vanilla perfume hit my face. The classical piano music was still playing softly, and as if the universe was writing a script just for me, standing right in the center of the sales floor, admiring herself in a floor-to-ceiling gilded mirror, was Chloe Kensington. She was trying on a massive, pure white, ankle-length cashmere and fur coat. Standing right behind her, expertly pinning the hem and fawning over her like a dedicated servant, was Eleanor. The store manager, the security guard near the door, saw me first. He immediately tensed, his hand going to his radio. The movement caught Eleanor's eye. She turned around, and when she saw me standing there in my duct-taped shoes, her face underwent a fascinating transformation. There was a brief, microscopic flash of the terror she had displayed a week ago, but it vanished almost instantly, replaced by a cold, hardened mask of pure arrogance. I knew exactly what had happened in her brain over the past 7 days. She had rationalized it. She had convinced herself that the $120 million figure was nothing more than a catastrophic POS system glitch. Perhaps she had called corporate IT, and they told her the new API had bugs. After all, what kind of centimillionaire runs out into the pouring rain, leaves a $40 scarf behind, and wears literal garbage on their feet? To Eleanor, I was just the broke, pathetic girl who broke her register. Oh, for heaven's sake, Eleanor muttered loudly, standing up from pinning Chloe's coat. She marched toward me, her Prada heels clicking aggressively against the Italian marble. You have got to be kidding me. How did you even get past the front door? Chloe turned around, clutching the lapels of the $15 zero coat. Her eyes widened, and then her mouth twisted into a vicious, theatrical sneer. Oh my God, Eleanor, why is this vagrant back in your store? Chloe shrieked, making sure every other wealthy customer in the boutique stopped what they were doing to watch. Is she stalking me? I literally threw $100 at her head last week, just so she would stop polluting the sidewalk near my favorite cafe. And now she's following me inside. The whispers started immediately. A woman holding a diamond-encrusted handbag scoffed and took a step away from me, acting as if poverty were an airborne virus. I didn't flush with embarrassment this time. I didn't feel my heart race. I just stood there, my hands calmly resting in the pockets of my faded hoodie. Observing them, it was a surreal feeling. I felt like a zoologist observing a fascinating Lex Bordes, albeit slightly disgusting, species of insect through a pane of unbreakable glass. I came to finish my return. Eleanor, I said, my voice perfectly level and quiet. And perhaps to do some shopping. Eleanor let out a sharp, incredulous bark of laughter. She crossed her arms, looking me up and down with maximum disdain. Shopping with what? The change you found in a public fountain? Eleanor sneered, her voice dripping with venom. Listen to me very carefully. You little scam artist. I don't know how you manipulated my terminal last week to show that ridiculous glitch, but corporate assured me our system is now secure. You are a homeless beggar who is currently terrifying my actual VIP clients. Chloe stepped forward, emboldened by the manager's cruelty. She flipped her perfectly blown-out blonde hair over the collar of the luxury coat. Honestly, you are pathetic. Chloe spat, pointing a manicured finger right at my face. Look at your shoes. You are tracking literal gutter water onto marble that costs more than your entire life. You don't belong here. You will never belong here. People like you exist to serve people like me. Now get out before we call the police and have you arrested for trespassing. She's absolutely right. Eleanor chimed in, turning to the burly guard. Marcus, escort this trash out of my boutique immediately. If she resists, call the precinct. Marcus began to heavily walk toward me, pulling a pair of zip-tie handcuffs from his belt just to make a point. The wealthy patrons in the store were openly laughing now, enjoying the free entertainment of watching a peasant being forcibly ejected from their exclusive sanctuary. They thought they had won. They thought they had successfully defended their ivory tower from the filthy outsider. I didn't move a single muscle. I just looked at Eleanor, locking eyes with her, and let a slow, chilling smile spread across my face. "Are you absolutely sure you want to do this, Eleanor?" I asked softly, my voice carrying effortlessly through the quiet store. "Because this is your final warning." "Parcis?" The ultimate flex. Eleanor let out a sharp, breathless laugh, looking around the boutique as if searching for a hidden camera. "My final warning," she repeated, her voice dripping with venomous amusement. "Are you actually threatening me? You delusional little rat, Marcus. I am done playing games. Grab her and physically throw her into the street." Marcus, the burly security guard, lunged forward, his heavy hand reaching out to clamp down on my shoulder. I didn't flinch. I didn't step back. With a sudden, sharp surge of authority that I didn't even know I possessed, I raised my hand and locked eyes with the guard. "Touch me, Marcus, and my legal team will personally ensure you spend the rest of your natural life tied up in civil litigation, so severe your grandchildren will be paying my legal fees," I said. My voice wasn't a shout. It was a deadly, icy whisper that echoed through the dead silence of the store. Marcus froze. His hand hovered an inch from my hoodie. There was something in my tone, an absolute, unshakable certainty, that short-circuited his brain. Leaving Marcus paralyzed, I walked straight past a visibly stunned Chloe. She instinctively took a step back, clutching the $15,000 cashmere coat closer to her chest as if I were going to physically attack her. I ignored her entirely and walked right up to the polished mahogany checkout counter. I reached into the front pocket of my damp, faded hoodie. Eleanor stood behind the register, her arms crossed. A smoke, triumphant smirk plastered across her face, fully expecting me to pull out a weapon, a handful of pennies, or a trash bag. Instead, I pulled out a card. It wasn't plastic. It was forged from solid, matte black titanium. It had no credit card numbers on the front, no expiration date, and no bank logo. It simply bore my name, laser-etched in stark silver lettering. It was an ultra-exclusive, invite-only black card, a financial instrument issued exclusively to clients whose net worth exceeded 9 figures. I didn't hand it to her. I tossed it onto the glass counter. Clack. The heavy, metallic thud of solid titanium hitting the glass was the loudest sound in the room. I looked Eleanor dead in the eyes, my expression utterly void of emotion. "I'm not leaving," I said, my voice ringing out clearly for every wealthy patron in the store to hear. "In fact, I'm buying. I will take it all. Every piece of clothing on the racks, every handbag in the display cases, every pair of shoes in the stockroom. Ring up the entire inventory of this boutique, right now." The boutique went graveyard silent. You could have heard a pin drop on the Italian marble. Chloe let out a high-pitched, nervous giggle from the center of the room. "Oh my God, she's actually having a psychotic break," she loudly whispered to a bystander. Eleanor stared at the heavy metal card sitting on her counter. She blinked, her smug smile faltering for a microsecond before returning with double the arrogance. "You think you can come in here with a fake piece of metal you bought off the internet and demand my inventory?" Eleanor hissed, her face flushing red with rage. "Fine, you want to play this game, I'll ring it up. And when this declines, I am calling the police and having you locked in a psych ward." Eleanor snatched the titanium card. She aggressively punched a master inventory override code into her high-end point-of-sale terminal. This function was meant for corporate audits, instantly totaling the retail value of every single barcoded item currently housed in the building. She slammed the card into the chip reader, practically trying to break it. "Let's see how rich you are, you pathetic scammer," Eleanor sneered, leaning over the counter. The terminal screen flashed blue. The little loading circle spun for exactly 1.5 seconds. There was no loud buzz. There was no declined error message. Instead, The machine emitted a soft, melodikime beep approved. The boutique's industrial receipt printer instantly kicked to life, whirring aggressively as it began printing a mile-long manifest of every item in the store. On the main digital monitor facing the customers, a massive, bold green number illuminated the room. Approved. 1,452. Ba ling 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 ling. Eleanor's soul physically evacuated her body. She stared at the glowing green letters. She looked down at the receipt machine, violently spitting out paper. She looked at the solid titanium card. And then, hair-wide, bloodshot eyes slowly rose to meet mine. The glitch from last week wasn't a glitch. The $120 million was real. The girl standing in front of her in duct-taped shoes hadn't hacked the system. She owned the system. Eleanor's mouth opened, but no sound came out. She looked like a fish suffocating on dry land. Her knees visibly buckled, and she had to grab the edge of the mahogany counter to keep from collapsing onto the floor. No, Eleanor wheezed. A pathetic, high-pitched squeak escaping her throat. No, this is impossible. I calmly reached over, retrieved my titanium card, and slipped it back into my hoodie. I then turned around to face the center of the room. Chloe was standing frozen like a statue, her jaw practically unhinged. The wealthy patrons who had been laughing at me moments ago were staring at me in absolute, horrified awe. I walked slowly toward Chloe. With every step I took, she shrank back, her eyes darting frantically to the receipt printer that was still buzzing loudly in the background. Take it off, Chloe, I said smoothly. What? Chloe stammered, her voice shaking uncontrollably. The coat. Take it off, I commanded, pointing at the $15,000 white cashmere garment. She was clutching. You haven't paid for it yet, which means it was part of the store's inventory. I just bought the entire store. You are currently stretching my property. Chloe's face burned a violent, humiliating shade of crimson. Tears of pure, unadulterated mortification welled up in her eyes. In front of her wealthy peers, in front of the entire store, the charity case she had mocked was currently treating her like a shoplifter. With trembling, defeated hands, Chloe slowly unbuttoned the coat, slid it off her shoulders, and handed it to me. She didn't say a single word. She just put her head down, pushed past the security guard, and sprinted out the heavy glass doors into the street. Her wealthy facade entirely shattered. I draped the heavy cashmere coat over my arm and turned back to the crowd. If anyone else is holding merchandise they haven't paid for, I suggest you put it down, I announced to the silent room. I am officially converting this boutique's entire inventory into a massive, free clothing drive for the downtown women's shelter. These clothes will be going to women who actually know what it means to survive. A collective gasp echoed through the room, but nobody dared to speak. They simply placed their purses and jackets on the nearest tables and quietly hurried out of the store. I walked back to the counter, where Eleanor was now openly weeping, her expensive makeup running down her face in dark, ugly streaks. Please, Eleanor sobbed, clasping her trembling hands together. Please, Mom. I didn't know. I swear to God I didn't know. Please don't ruin my life. I'm not ruining your life. Eleanor, I said calmly, pulling my cracked smartphone from my pocket. You ruined it yourself the moment you decided my humanity was tied to my net worth. I dialed a number. It rang twice before a crisp, professional voice answered. Wealth management. This is Richard. Hi, Richard, I said, putting the phone on speaker and resting it on the glass counter. My portfolio holds a substantial stake in the parent conglomerate that owns Laura Boutiques, correct? Yes, ma'am, Richard replied instantly. You are currently the third largest majority shareholder. How can I assist you? Eleanor let out a choked, devastated wail, finally collapsing to her knees behind the register. I need you to contact the corporate CEO immediately, I instructed, my eyes locked on the top of Eleanor's sobbing head. Inform him that the general manager of the downtown location, Eleanor, is to be terminated effectively immediately, without severance, for gross, repeated violations of the corporate customer discrimination policy. If he refuses, tell him I am liquidating my entire stake and tanking his stock by morning. Understood. Mom, it will be handled within the next 60 seconds. I hung up the phone. I looked at Marcus, the security guard, who was standing frozen in shock. Marcus, I said gently, please escort the former manager off my property. Parcet, the new reality and outro. Within 2 hours. The pristine, suffocatingly luxurious interior of Laura looked like a chaotic warehouse. I hired a fleet of private delivery trucks. And under my direct supervision, every single piece of silk, cashmere, and designer leather was boxed up and shipped directly to 3 different local homeless shelters. Eleanor was long gone. Her career in luxury, retail permanently decimated. Chloe had deleted her social media accounts, presumably hiding in her father's mansion, completely terrified of the power I now wielded. As for me, I stepped out of the boutique and back onto the wet city pavement. My life is entirely different now. I live in a breathtaking, glass-walled penthouse overlooking the skyline. I don't eat instant ramen anymore, and my checking account will never drop below 8 figures. But as I walked to my waiting private car, I looked down at my feet. I was wearing a brand new pair of simple, black Converse sneakers. No gray duct tape. No holes. Just comfortable, practical shoes that reminded me of exactly who I was and exactly where I came from. I have the power of a god, but I choose to walk like a human. Before you go, I have a question for you. If you suddenly opened your phone and saw $120 million sitting in your account, who is the very first person you would put in their place? And exactly how would you do it? Let me know in the comments down below. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button, turn on the notification bell, and stay tuned, because there are plenty more stories of hidden fortunes and sweet karma coming your way. I'll see you in the next one.